Now in video lecture 5.6 we'll look at two different climate regions, Mediterranean and humid subtropical. We can see that the humid subtropical is right next to the Mediterranean in terms of both being warmer, so latitudinally these are going to be closer to the equator than the following ones we're going to look at. However, you can see the difference between the humid subtropical versus the Mediterranean is the humid subtropical is a bit wetter. In the United States, it's our southeast coast, which is overwhelmingly a humid subtropical climate. Several key characteristics of a humid subtropical climate region include a year-round precipitation pattern, and the fact you're going to find it on the east coast of continents. This is going to differ considerably when we compare this to a Mediterranean climate region in a minute. Further, you're going to find very hot and muggy summers. This is one key characteristic of the American South, is you're going to find very, very high humidity levels, but also high temperatures. This makes sense because this is an area very close to a water body, but also closer to the equator, and thus going to be latitudinally warmer than the other climate regions we're going to look at as they fall from here. Further, this is an area that's quite habitable. So of all the ones we've looked at up until now, this is going to be the one in which you're going to find the largest number of concentrations of population today, especially in the American South, but even more so in coastal China, as we'll look at in a minute. What causes that year-round precipitation characteristic? First off, this is going to be an area that has these empty air masses quite close to it, the Gulf, but also the Atlantic. And so they're very nearby, these moist tropical air masses. Further, in the wintertime, mid-latitude cyclonic systems track through the American South, and so they move to a more southerly location. So one of the things you're going to find is convection in the summertime overwhelmingly what explains the key characteristic as far as the atmospheric lifting mechanism, but then frontal cyclones will be have more of an impact in the wintertime. Finally, where we're going to find is the American South, coastal China, actually the southern tip of Indiana. If you look at this extreme southern and western tip of Indiana, there over by Evansville, actually is characteristic of more of a humid subtropical climate region than the other ones that we're going to look at when we look at Indiana. So it's kind of interesting. We see certain types of vegetation that we only find in humid subtropical climates also found in this locale. Here's the temperature profile for a humid subtropical climate region. You're noticing the temperatures are going to be a little bit more variable than the other ones we looked at, and that makes sense. We're going a little bit more closer to the poles than the tropical desert and the tropical rainforest. But comparing this to Mediterranean, you're going to see a very much more of a year-round precipitation. Yeah, I see that in October, November, it does decline a bit, but for the most part, this is a year-round precipitation pattern. Here's a picture from the American South. One thing you will note is as you're coastal, but also a little bit more southern, you're going to find a little bit more pine. But then as you go a little bit more northerly, as you increase your latitude, you're going to find a little bit more of the deciduous type of trees. Here we have a population density map, and so we see the two circles showcasing areas that have a humid subtropical climate region, and you'll note that especially in coastal China, you're going to find a good amount of their population lives in that humid subtropical climate. Next, we're going to move to a Mediterranean climate region. Key to understanding a Mediterranean climate is very simple. Dry summers, wet winters. What causes that dry summer? It's because the subtropical high pressure moves over this area during the summertime. And so that subtropical high pressure, it migrates to the north during the American summer, but over time, in the winter, it starts to migrate back down. And as it migrates further back towards the equator, that subtropical high pressure, then this area is affected by mid-latitude cyclonic activity. So then you see a much different precipitation characteristic with a much wetter winter than you'd find during the high pressure that dominates in the summertime. Like I said, this is all due to the movement of those global pressure belts, which we're going to see illustrated in some graphics that follow. Where we're going to find this is on the southwest side of continents. So think about the southwest side of North America. You're going to find California, but also Mediterranean Europe. So Spain, Portugal, parts of France, Italy, and Greece are all good examples of a Mediterranean climate region. Further, we're going to find this also in southern Australia, and if you know anything about what these places all have in common, is they are all wine-producing areas, which I'll further explain on a following image. Finally, one of the things is another way to say the dry summers, but we have a summer drought. So this is going to play a key role in understanding the type of vegetation we would find here, because they're going to have to withstand the vegetation that summer dry period. Here we can see the Mediterranean climate region in yellow, which is on the southwest side of North America / United States, and then of course the humid subtropical climate region on the eastern coast. Now we quickly return to this previous graphic that we showed to explain how that subtropical high pressure moves over this area. So if we could think of this area being about 30 to 40 degrees north. So in this instance right here, they're just now being affected by the subtropical high pressure. But by December and January, you can see how all of this has shifted to the south. And so now, during the wintertime, 30 to 35 degrees north is underneath and affected by mid-latitude cyclonic activity. But of course, we go to June and July, we can see the subtropical high pressure moves considerably over this area and overwhelmingly dominates the characteristic weather pattern during the summertime. Another way to globally illustrate this is think about this as the winter pattern, and so here if you look over there on the left-hand side of the United States, you're going to find more of a mid-latitude cyclonic activity that dominates the area compared to the subtropical high pressure that moves over this area and brings quite dry characteristic weather. Now when we compare climate graphs for humid subtropical versus Mediterranean, you can clearly see that dry summer pattern, that dry summer characteristic weather that occurs in the Mediterranean climate region versus humid subtropical, which creates a situation during that summertime where a lot of that low-lying vegetation essentially turns brown or goes dormant. But with that being said, these are areas that have minimal amounts of cloud cover during the summertime. One of the things we'll talk about a little bit later on is human impact on the environment. How can we reduce our human impact on the environment? And I'm not going to shove solar panels down everyone's throat because it doesn't make sense for everyone. In an area like, in this case, Spain, or in southwest United States, you're going to get a considerable number of days during the summer with no cloud cover. So local solutions to local problems. Why not have more of a solar energy focus in this area of the country than what we would find in Indiana, where of course we have a much different summer characteristic weather pattern. Here we can see key characteristic also is type of shrub. You're not going to see a lot of dense trees and forests in the Mediterranean climate region. Instead, you're going to find a lot more of this scrub, as it would be called, more low-lying, smaller trees and grasslands. Here we have the cork tree. The cork tree, actually, one of the things is the bark is that cork, which then goes into wine. Of course, a lot of cork has been manufactured and it's synthetic. It's fake cork. But the origins of cork actually come from this particular type of tree, which is found in a Mediterranean climate region. And so why has this tree evolved to have this cork type of bark? Well, same idea with why a cork is used in bottles to help to store and to help keep things from penetrating that water or that wine, let's say. And so one of the things is this tree, it stores a lot of water in its trunk, and so that cork on the outside does a good job of preventing the loss of that moisture from inside that trunk. One of the things that is a problem here during the summertime is forest fires, and so it gets quite dry, the underlying surface. The grass obviously goes dormant, and so anytime if you get the occasional storm, whether it be convection or maybe the occasional mid-latitude that sneaks down in this area, one of the things you'll notice a lightning bolt can really kickstart, or even a cigarette butt can really do a good job of kickstarting these forest fires. Add to it a type of wind pattern called the Santa Ana winds, and you get yourself, this area is very vulnerable to forest fires, but also landslides in the wintertime when you get that, all of a sudden, that moisture that's been lacking throughout much of the summertime. When during the wintertime, when they do get it, it often what it does is, because that surface is so dry, you get a lot of landslides during that first major rain event.